Andrew, we're both betting guys, right?
We are.
We are indeed.
Bet Saracen guys even.
We are bet Saracen guys. Holy moly. What a situation that is.
What a time. What a time to be a Saracen guy.
Man, I've read so many articles about that, honestly, since we had Carlton on the show. That's getting weird, man. It really is. This is going to wind up becoming I think potentially a national story. So I mean, heard it here first or whatever.
I mean, first reported by Inside Arkansas. I mean, it is what it is. Honestly, Curtis, when we were recording that interview, I didn't think that it was going to turn into this. In fact, I was a little concerned. I was like, I don't know what's going on. This is getting off the rails here. But, yeah, it's become quite the phenomenon. And, yeah, everyone's talking about it. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to get us off track there, but, yeah.
No, I know. Well, I know some people have chimed in the chat, kind of asking about helping to get that rule passed or the legislation and everything. And, man, we'll see what happens there. It's a pretty wild deal. But I know that they're passionate about it. But if you are a frequenter of Bet Saracen and that app, they have released their player props for the season for Arkansas. So it only feels right to me that we kind of work our way through several of these and maybe play a little game of take it or leave it and see how we feel with them. Obviously, all the odds are different, but I like that they kind of set a baseline for us with some of these stats and projections. It gives you an idea of maybe an outside the box look at what people are thinking some of these Razorbacks are going to do. And we'll see if we're buying into it or not. First one, take it or leave it, Andrew. Braylon Russell, freshman running back, over 199.5 rushing yards and over 4.5 rushing touchdowns.
So oddly enough, the thing about Braylon Russell that we all kind of agree on is he's a big body, obviously power guy. He could have a lot of goal line work, could score a lot of touchdowns, but I'm actually more confident in the yards here because I think he's going to be potentially Arkansas's number 3 back, which even if you only get real meaningful time in 2 or 3 games, you can still get 200 yards. 5 touchdowns is just not a small amount for a true freshman running back or for any running back, frankly. I mean, I think Jaquin Jackson scored 4 touchdowns last year at Utah, or 3 or 4. 5 touchdowns for a guy that's going to be the 3rd, maybe 4th back. I don't know if I'm quite buying it yet, but I won't be surprised if he clears both of these fairly easily. I feel like the yardage he could get pretty solidly.
Yeah, I think that'd be the hang up for me too, is those touchdowns. I don't know, being a big fella, maybe some goal line carries, but again, it also depends on who you have in front of you. So like you said, he might be Arkansas's 3rd running back or whatever. You got a powerful, I'm going to fall forward kind of guy in Jaquin Jackson right there at the top. So who are you really going to give those carries to, assuming both guys are healthy?
I don't see them being like, let's get this shrimp Jaquin Jackson out of here and let's get the true freshman in there. You know what I mean?
I mean, he only weighs like 10 pounds more than Jaquin Jackson at this point anyway, which is wild. But whatever. At any rate, I think I'm going to leave that for now because of the rushing touchdowns, but just by a hair. Yeah, just by a hair.
But I also wouldn't be stunned if he had 150 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Oh,
or it's literally all he does is the goal line. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Who knows? Okay. Defensive side of the ball, take it or leave it. Landon Jackson, over 49.5 tackles. That's quite a bit for a defensive end, and over 6.5 sacks.
Yeah, I don't know. The tackles are kind of weird here.
Yeah, I should have already done this, but I need to look and see how many tackles Landon Jackson had last season. I just feel like that's a lot.
I didn't look it up because I was like, I bet Curtis has the number, so I'll just wait.
Yeah, no, I didn't. But it's right here in front of me. He led the team in tackles for loss for 13.5. He did have 6.5 sacks last season. And so he would just need to go over his total from last season. And he had a career best 44 tackles. So we're asking him to get 6 more tackles and 1 more sack. So I'm going to take that.
I'm going to take that too. I think the sacks, I mean, if he's healthy, I feel pretty confident. I'm not guaranteeing it. 7 sacks is nothing to scoff at. But if he plays in all 12 games, I feel like he's going to get 8 or 9, 10 sacks. Tackles, that's a lot of tackles, especially for a defensive end. And You remember back in the day when like tackles was the only way we had to really quantify who was good at defense. And so it was like, oh yeah, you want, your safety to have a bunch of tackles. It's like, do you? Does that make sense? Or like, how it is. 50 sounds like a lot, but I still feel like he's going to be involved a lot and he's going to be on the field a lot. I think you get, right around 50 tackles and 8 or 9 sacks.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm taking that. I feel pretty good about that one. I mean, he's going to be the dude on this defense too. And he was last year across the defensive line, but they were legit running 10 to 12 guys in and out every game. And I just feel like he's going to play more snaps this year. I would be surprised if he didn't. I don't think he's, like Deke Adams said, you're not going to ask a defensive lineman or whatever to go play 65 snaps a game or something. But there were games where he would play 40 plus snaps, but then also somewhere he play 25 or whatever. Yeah. So I think it's going to be consistently higher too. And that should help him. Quarterback, Taylon Green, take it or leave it, over 2,499.5 passing yards and over 399.5 rushing yards. So 2,500 passing, 400 rushing. Where are you at?
I think this one comes down to health, frankly. Now I know Taylon Green, his career high in passing is like 2,100 or something like that. Like he hasn't thrown for a ton of yards. I feel pretty confident that he's going to soar over his career marks in passing. I think he's going to. I think, and I also believe what Petrino and what Pittman have been saying about, like, this guy feels like he's a quarterback who can run. He's not a running quarterback, which I know sounds like BS. It's really not. I think if you just watch Taylon Green, he seems like a guy. It's not like he's going to just be taking off and running a lot. Or at least that's not going to be his first option. I think he wants to throw the ball. I think you could see this guy throw for close to 3,000 yards. I really do think that's possible, especially with the way offense is played in college football these days. I think KJ, I don't know what he finished at last year, but I know in most of his years he was over this 2,500 passing yards mark here. I think Taylon's going to have a good chance to do that. The rushing, we talked about that a little bit the other day. I don't want him running the ball a crazy amount, but I feel like 400 is going to be doable. There's sacks in there a little bit, but I am taking Taylon Green to have the over on these. What's the odds on this? Do you have that?
Yeah, I can pull them up real quick. I kept those off purposely because obviously the crazier they are, the more it might impact your decision making there. But yeah, to go through the ones that we've already talked about. Braylon Russell at over 199.5 rushing yards and over 4.5 rushing touchdowns is plus 150.
I wouldn't take that Braylon Russell one at plus 150.
Right. Landon Jackson over 49.5 total tackles and over 6.5 total sacks plus 250. And then Taylon Green here at 2,500 and 400 is plus 200.
Yes, I really like Jackson and Green at 2-to-1 odds or better. I like both of those.
Yeah, and going back and looking at it here, you're right. Like it would be a significant career high in passing yardage for Taylon Green. He threw for 1,752 last season, threw for just over 1,900 the year prior. Again, I'm with you. I do think he's going to eclipse that by quite a bit. 2,500 seems reasonable to me. And he's rushed for over 400 yards in both of his seasons that he's really played. 436 last year, 467 the year before. So
we're talking about a guy who could have multiple 100-yard rushing games, like realistically. So absolutely. 400 rushing yards, he could do that. Yeah,
I'm taking that. Quinton Jackson, the bell cow, people are saying. Take it or leave it. Jaquindon Jackson over 649.5 rushing yards and over 6.5 rushing touchdowns.
Curtis, not only am I going to take that, I'm seeing plus 325 on this.
You are.
So we're talking about better than 3-to-1. That is a retirement bet, is what that is.
He rushed for 797 yards last year at Utah.
So he ran for more than that the year before. Like he ran for like 500, 600 the year before, and he didn't even play running back until halfway through the year.
Right.
I feel like barring injury, he's going to have well over 650 rushing yards.
Yeah.
Maybe he settles for 850 or something like that. But it's like we're talking about whether or not he's going to get 1,000. He'll get over 650 if he's healthy. And we agree that Braylon Russell's not going to be poaching all those touchdowns.
That's right.
I think 7-8 is a respectable number for a RB1 on a decent offense that is going to be rotating a little bit. But I could see him getting double digits.
Yeah, I really could too. I think so too. Last year was a little bit interesting. I mean, he rushed for just under 800 yards, but he only had 4 touchdowns. That seems a little bit strange. But the year before, like you mentioned, he had a pretty good season. I mean, he ran 78 times for 531 yards, 6.8 yards per carry.
Yeah, that's a hefty amount. And I think he became a full-time running back like week 3 or week 4 of that year.
Yeah, that's a heck of a season. And he had 9 rushing touchdowns that year. So, the track record is there to suggest that's something he could do. What did you say it was? Plus 325?
Plus 325. Yeah. That feels like one that should be even odds.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because it's just injury. I mean, literally, like, injury is the thing you have to kind of worry about with all of these, frankly. But it's like, yeah, I feel like if we simulated this season 10 times, he hits that over probably 8 or 9 times.
Yes. Yeah, I think so too. We're going to get into some interesting ones now here. Really doing some projection. Okay. Take it or leave it. Isaiah Satania, who we've been waiting for years now, but it's finally his time to shine. Finally his time to break out. At least Saracen thinks it might be. Isaiah Satania over 499.5 receiving yards and over 34.5 receptions. That is quite a bit more production than we have seen, I'm going to guess, from his entire career combined.
Yeah, I don't think his career is – I mean, he's only really played – I mean, yeah, because he redshirted his first year. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think he had like 180 yards or something like that receiving.
He had 15 catches for 129 yards last season.
There you go. Curtis, I'm taking this.
Let's go.
I'm taking this because I am fairly confident that he's a starter on this team. I mean, he's been since the day one of spring ball, he's been kind of the starting slot receiver. You hear the way that all the coaches talk about him. I know we've been kind of hearing this for a while now, but honestly, I really like this. I really think if Satania plays in all 12 games, he's going to have a chance to do this. I think if it were all-purpose yards, I'd feel super – I mean, that's a little bit tough because that's returner. Yeah. Even just yards from scrimmage, though, because I think he's going to have some rushing here, maybe 100, 150 rushing. I think Satania is going to be a very big part of this offense, and I think Petrino is going to find out that there are no shortage of ways he can get this man the football.
That's 100% right. Feed the studs. He likes to do it, and I think Satania is going to be one of those guys for him. I wouldn't be surprised. And this could also be Andrew Armstrong because he's so good, but every quarterback kind of winds up having a security blanket. That they just know this guy's going to be open. They can dump it off to him, move forward. It wouldn't surprise me if Satania winds up being that guy to a degree. Luke Haas could be that guy too. But yeah, I think he's going to get targeted a lot. And I think this is well within reach for Satania. Plus 350 too, by the way.
I'm more confident. I'll say this because I don't want people to just think like I'm just going to take the over on everything. I'm more confident in Satania reaching his mark, whatever that is, than Broden. Like I think Satania is the safer bet. His skill set's so versatile, like he's not just a deep threat. He's not just a jet sweep motion guy. Like I think he really can do it all. And I think Petrino has really enjoyed working with him this offseason. And I mean, the first scrimmage, which we didn't get to see, but we heard, he catch like 3 touchdowns. He had like a 20-yard reception on like every possession. It seems like he and Talon kind of have that relationship a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You mentioned Tyrone Broden, so I'll go ahead and bring his up now, which again, it's a lot of projection here. Take it or leave it. Tyrone Broden over 549.5 receiving yards and over 29.5 receptions. And if I remember correctly, what did he have? 15 catches last year?
It was like 7 or 8 yards per catch.
Yeah.
It was very low.
15 receptions for 109 yards and 3 touchdowns. He better have that in 2 weeks.
That's a decent rushing game for Quentin Jackson. That's what that is.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think he's going to be far above that. I think I'm leaving this, though.
I think he's going to –
one, because they're going to spread the ball around a lot.
Yeah.
And he's been banged up in fall camp. And he's, had some issues getting his talent to show up on the field on Saturdays throughout his career. I am buying the Tyrone Broden. Like, he's a much better player. He's clearly like a, no doubt, when he's healthy, starter for this team. And I think clearly a top 3 receiver for Arkansas. but I'm just a little bit more confident in guys like Satania and Armstrong and even Has than I am. Like, I think when it comes to nut cutting time, I think those guys are going to be getting targeted. Now, I do think Tyrone Broden is going to have some games this year where he has like 4 receptions, 140 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like, I think he's going to be a lot of boom or bust. But I think 550 and 30 receptions. So 30 receptions, that's basically 3 a game, a little bit under that. Like, he'll get the receptions fairly easily.
I think he'll get the receptions. That's what I was going to say. I think he'll get the receptions. 550 yards is a lot.
It's a lot.
And I understand he's, probably projected to be the number 2 guy there, but you also have to consider, Luke Has as another guy that they're going to be throwing the football to. Is not a
He's going to have right around this 500-yard mark.
Right. And so if you're looking at Andrew Armstrong, which I didn't put his on this list, but I mean, what are we thinking for him? 800 yards, maybe more. We just said Isaiah Satania, maybe over 500. We know Luke Has is going to be a big factor. Are there going to be 550 more passing yards to go to Tyrone Broden? I don't know. So
yeah, all of a sudden it gets real thin where you're just like, all right, these guys after him, like the Jaden Wilsons and Tesla Alderwood, can have 0 yards.
Yeah.
But Armstrong, I want to say he had like 750, 760, somewhere in that range, approaching 800. I think that's probably where you start with him. I think there's room for more. You can make an argument, Armstrong's a legit 1,000-yard guy. We'll see if he gets it with how they spread the ball out. But yeah, I think you start doing the math, and it's like not all of these guys are going to reach their totals. And so I'm kind of just tentatively feeling like Broden will be the guy that doesn't quite reach his. But, I think if you're basing off the spring, seemed like he was the number 2 guy behind Armstrong for a while there.
Yeah, for sure. I think I got one more offensive player. Oh, yeah, that's right. Take it or leave it. R-Dub, Rashad Dubinion, over 249.5 rushing yards, over 99.5 receiving yards.
This is the easiest one, in my opinion. I think this is a no-brainer.
Please tell me you're taking that. And
I'm taking that. He had that last year in like the worst offense of all time. Like he had around those numbers.
I think he's going to have that before they play their first SEC game. I really do. Yeah. Like it's really not asking that much. Like 60 yards a game or whatever, and a couple big catches. That seems like giving away money to me.
The receiving is not. He might have 100-yard game in receiving. Like
he very well could.
Really, but like he's gonna catch a lot of passes, I would imagine.
And just so I can.
Now I will say R-Dub's stats his first 2 years are way lower than y'all remember. Like it just. Because when I looked at him the other day, I was kind of like, whoa, he only had, a couple 100 yards as a freshman, a couple 100 as a sophomore or whatever. But you got to take into account the worst offense of all time. I think he averaged like 3.2 yards a carry last year.
Yeah.
I don't imagine that's going to be the case. And the receiving, I feel like, is the easiest aspect here, where it's like, that's like 7 or 8 receptions.
Yeah. And this is at plus 420.
Yeah, that's
Dominion.
Nuts.
I am cashing out on that right now. I'm doing it right now as we're talking. I'll go ahead and book that as revenue brought in. Thank you.
Yeah, just go ahead. Yeah, that's.
I'm trying to find this. I'm trying to find this 50-50 thing on the app so I can, put my hat in the ring. I don't see it yet, so I guess that hasn't.
Checking every day for that 50-50. But yeah, man. I mean, obviously, there's a scenario for all of these to not hit, and you're one injury away with all of them. But man, I feel like R-Dub is getting disrespected by Vegas a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that, man. 2 more that I wanted to get to, because we've talked about linebackers so much, it would be negligent for us not to talk about these. The 2 guys you would expect us to talk about, take it or leave it. Xavier Sori, over 74.5 tackles and over 7.5 tackles for loss.
That's a lot. That's a lot of tackles there. And again, tackles are just a little bit of a weird metric, where it's like you can rack up 100 tackles as a linebacker without being good. I need people to understand that. Like, that is a real thing that happens.
There have been a number of Razorbacks in recent memory who have done exactly that.
I was just about to say, I was like, well, I'm not gonna say Bumperpool's name, but yeah, you can rack up tackles despite not being good a lot. It happens, and I think Sori has a chance to actually be good. But I just don't want people, when I say over on this one, to think like, oh, so that means you think Xavier Sori is going to be like a star. No, I just think he's going to be Arkansas's top linebacker. He's probably going to play the most. 7.5 tackles for loss is a pretty like solid amount there. I think that probably is going to be more difficult, frankly, than just the simple counting stats. But I kind of am leaning towards take it here. Are you?
Yeah, I think I am. And just what I did was went back and looked at Arkansas's linebackers last year. And I know different players, different seasons, whatever. Jaheim Thomas led the team. He had 90 total tackles. He had 6.5 TFLs. But then I looked at Pooh, and Pooh had 74 tackles and 6.5 TFLs. So you're asking Xavier Sori essentially to get one more tackle, one more TFL than what Pooh produced for Arkansas last season. And Pooh only played in 11. He missed a game. He only played in 11 out of the 12 games.
And Jaheim Thomas got benched halfway, like towards the end of the year too. Like he didn't play down the stretch a little bit.
Yeah, because it was wild. He had how many games in a row where Jaheim Thomas led the team in tackles and stuff early on.
Yeah, it was a bunch.
I think I'm buying into this with Sori. They need it. They really do, especially if he's supposed to be one of your guys, and you know it's widely believed that Brad Spence is going to be the other one. I don't know, man. Take it or leave it. Brad Spence over 44.5 tackles and 4.5 sacks. 4.5 sacks is, I mean, it's a fairly high number, but given the way they're using him, I don't know. That's interesting to think about. If they don't get more than 44.5 tackles out of Brad Spence, this team's in trouble.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the 44.5 tackles, I mean, that literally is just a matter of if he plays and stays healthy. I mean, if he's Arkansas's 2 or 3 at linebacker, that's a wrap. The 4.5 sacks is definitely the interesting part here. You know, I was looking at these props this morning, and I was looking at that number, and I was like, well, I guess it's going to kind of come down to how they use him, or how are they going to move him around. And then we go to the press conference today, and Travis Williams is like, oh, yeah, we love Brad Spence, and we love moving him around and his versatility, and he's kind of our jack of all trades. And so they play him close to the line of scrimmage. He kind of said all the right things that made me think that if Arkansas is going to have a like pass rushing linebacker, it would be Brad Spence. 5 sacks is still, I mean, dude, Landon Jackson had 6.5 last year.
Yeah.
And he was all SEC first team defensive end. So 5 sacks is nothing to scoff at for a linebacker. I think I'm going to lean towards leave it, but I actually don't hate this one.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the linebackers last year, Jaheim Thomas had 3.5 sacks. Pooh had 2 sacks. And so, yeah, you know, getting to 5, that's asking a lot for a guy in his first full season of, you know, being a dude and being on the field a ton. So I might lean towards leaving it for that reason too. But I will say, I think Brad Spence is going to be well over that mark on tackles.
Yeah.
Well over
75, 80 tackles if he's really playing.
Yeah.
We'll see how it works out. But you know, that's plus 550, by the way. So that's one of those hefty ones.
550.
So like if you're a Brad Spence guy and you're kind of like, oh, I kind of like that one. I mean, plus 550.
Yeah, how about that, man? Goodness gracious.